All right, it's 6 o'clock. Let's call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the governing body of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and today is July 11th, 2019. It is 6 o'clock, and so we will call the meeting to order, and that's agenda item number 1. Item number 2 is remarks of visitors. Any citizen may address the Planning and Zoning Commission on any matter. Registration forms are available on the table, and the form should be completed and delivered to city staff. We do have one person who would like to make some remarks. And as always, we say please limit remarks to 3 minutes, and we will receive the information and ask staff to look into the matter or place the issue on a future agenda. And so we do have one person that I'd like to recognize who wants to speak to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that is Mr. Jeff Horn of 1015 East Washington Avenue. Mr. Horn.
You stole my thunder. I'm supposed to tell you who I am.
I know.
And where I live.
Yeah. But there's no point in doing it twice. You wrote it.
Right. And I have some handouts for you.
Oh, good. Okay.
But so I've come today to ask you for your help. I sat in on all the sign ordinance workshops, so
Yes.
I was privy to all of that went on, and I think you guys did a wonderful job. But over the last week, it's come to my attention through other things that have gone on, mostly having to do with the Burger King. I think we need to fix an area of the sign ordinance. The definitions, I thought were okay, but I had the dreaded words open to interpretation this week and last week. And I don't think we want these to be open to interpretation. So I went online and I asked for sign ordinances. And I just went down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and until I got tired. And I just copied down all the definitions of.
Be careful.
Yeah, I think there's too many here.
Okay.
3.
Thank you.
Okay. So the two in real question in my mind are the monument sign and a pole sign. And I guess I know we went over it, and I know we worded it the way we thought that it was sufficient, but simply, a monument sign is a low sign, and you can read all the other sign ordinances definitions. It's a low sign that is solid from the sign panel down to the ground. There are other aspects to it. Doesn't say how high off the ground the sign panel would be, although most of them limit a monument sign to 6 feet high, some 4 feet, and then one I saw that was 8 feet. Doesn't matter what the materials are, doesn't matter what the foundation's made of for most people. Some have masonry that it's called for. But conversely, a pole sign is the sign elevated up in the air that has air and visual space underneath the sign, between the ground and the sign. So, and the last page in there, you'll see is what Burger King submitted. It was billed to City Council and then reported in the paper again as a monument sign. And anybody can see that by nobody's definition I could find anywhere is that a monument sign. Now, in the overlay district, we require a monument sign. And if you were at the meetings where we had the workshop about signage, you know that I feel like the fastest way for a city or a town or a municipality to start looking bad is through its signage. And a great example is Huntsville. It used to be such a charming town, had more charm than Navasota, and now it's just awful. But you'll have to take the trip yourself rather than my word for it. So here's what I implore you for help with. As soon as the car wash is built by Jim Colcourse and the Burger King, we're going to have commercial growth just go right on down Washington. yeah, it's an overlay district, but we're gonna have the commercial growth. And what I have pictured, if we allow the definitions to go on as they are and the interpretations of them as they are, I see many, many, many pole signs all the way down Washington under the guise of being monument signs, unless you guys work on those two definitions specifically and really harden them so that there can't be any misunderstanding about what a monument sign is, because we know what we want. At least I think from sitting in on all those discussions, I think we all know what we want, what a monument sign should be. I think of it as a nightmare. You driving down Washington and seeing what looks like an interstate access road designed after midnight and a number of drinks on the back of an envelope. That's what I got pictured, and I think that'll happen if we don't, if I can't get your help. And I'm just a citizen tonight. I am not representing city council in any way, shape, or form. But I don't want to see the city, the character of the city deteriorate. So that's why I'm imploring you for help. As you see the picture of the Burger King sign, it's bad enough as it is, but in very short order, that sign's even going to be worse than it is there.
Have they
25 feet.
offered this?
Yeah, and it was
Monday,
approved
it was
Monday
approved.
night.
It was
last week.
approved?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
So, and as you see, the vertical posts, for example, the vertical posts are a foot by a foot, which means you got 3 5/8 inch brick on each side, you got a 4-inch post in the middle, and you will have a steel post in the middle. So you've got the bricks and the mortar on all 4 sides coming up against the post. As soon as there's any wind at all, there's gonna be deflection in those 4-inch posts, and they can't be any smaller than 4-inch. So the bricks are gonna start breaking off and cracking up, and it's gonna look as ratty as can be. You know, and it's our brand new pole sign on Washington Avenue. I'm not happy with it, but I'm only one person. So, what's really made me angry these past few days is that if you Google, and you got computers right there, Google Burger King monument signs, and you will see that they have many monument sign prototypes that they use all over the country. They've been using them for years. But what are we gonna have? We're gonna have a 25-foot high pole sign instead. So,
What was their reasoning for this? I mean, why did they choose this when they saw what we specifically had asked for?
I can't tell you, but there's an example in Anniston, Alabama, where Burger King was built, and then they removed those signs 2 more times until they got down to monument signs, because the owner of that Burger King was driven around town and shown why they want something like that, and he was convinced, wow, I see the character here, and so I'll go along with it. Well, this owner is
Who is this owner?
Jim Colkhorst.
Well, isn't he familiar with Navasota?
Sure, I can't answer those kind of questions for him. I'm not in his head, but it's what he wanted. He initially proposed a 35-foot sign and was turned down and came back with this. All I know is the city backed him. The city staff and so on sent to the city council a letter saying, we propose that you accept this. So,
And didn't,
and it was billed as a monument sign, and so I think that helped make it palatable to the city council members, but I can't speak for everybody.
in the article, I read the paper just a little while ago, didn't I read that it was gonna have some sort of flashing?
Oh, gosh, yeah, it's gonna have
Stuff on it as well.
It's gonna have an electronic
Yes,
message center.
yes. Mhm.
If you look at the sketch, it gives you
The
gives you a
rattlers.
45 to 46 square foot size. That Jim Colkhorst apparently told Lupe, who told everybody that it's really gonna be 26 or 24 square feet.
24, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
the sign ordinance is 24 square feet.
But I've worked with developers my whole working life. And now he has an approved drawing right there. That's what's been approved
Now, let's
by
go back
city
to
council.
something you said earlier.
I just believe what's on the drawing that was approved is what we're gonna end up seeing unless something else is done, and I don't,
Okay, you said
will-
somebody backed this before, who backed this?
well, the city staff, I don't know who writes those things, but they sent out an attached letter to the agenda. I assume it's Brad and Lupe and
Well, you know, my
whoever
son
else.
and his wife have a house exactly 1 block from this Burger King.
I have a house.
I mean, you know, do we want our young people all moving off to College Station?
Well,
I mean, is this the whole idea that they're gonna just go, hey, you know, I can't take this? I mean, what's the city staff backing this for? I mean, my son, his wife's aunts, 3 of them, have 3 houses on that corner, all 3 of them?
Well,
I mean, I don't get it.
I don't think we can say that somebody's gonna move or not move based on a sign. I mean,
I can tell you, Steve's already asked about the Burger King situation.
well, the Burger King is different than the Burger King
Yeah, but
sign.
wait till they see the sign.
what I
so
can tell
nobody's
you is the
excited
very
about the
next
Burger
property
King.
down has already sold.
Yes,
And it's gonna become a
So
commercial
it's
piece
gonna
of
be
property.
bad.
And that's in the overlay district.
yeah,
This property was not in the overlay district.
Correct, it was
Right.
just the next
that's
one
the
too.
problem.
And so the variance request was for, an elevated sign within that distance from the highway, is that correct?
That's correct.
There was a variance requested?
Yes.
That is what city council approved on Monday.
Right.
Yeah, because normally you guys would approve the signs.
Yeah.
But if a variance is requested, then it goes straight to city council for signs only, not for other things having to do with planning and zoning.
Boy, that was politically correct, wasn't it, on somebody's part?
But
Go that direction.
when it comes, so very shortly, you're gonna get a preliminary site plan given to you for Burger King, and I have quite a few comments to make about that. You'll really love it, Sarah.
So,
He's already told us that when you come out Post Oak, you can't go to your house. You'll have to go out onto Washington somehow or another and turn around and then go up your street.
So your request to us is to evaluate the definition of a monument sign?
In light of what other people have done, please solidify our 2 definitions,
Pole
but
and
mostly
the
the
monument.
monument sign. We also have a little bit of, it's vague as to what's a pole sign versus what we call something, an elevated sign or something like that. I forget what it's called, when it really shouldn't be considered necessarily any different. Other sign ordinances don't do it, but in any case, it's a monument sign. If we're gonna require a monument sign, we sure as heck better be able to define it so that we get what we want. If we're gonna have people within the city say, yeah, sure, we'll take that as a monument sign.
Well, you know, to me, I mean, we did that sign ordinance about a year or so ago,
Right.
and we should review what we do on an annual basis to see if it still fits. And so I would recommend that we do that.
But if you read those definitions, you'll see the important thing is that it's a low sign that is
Like at the
no
Horlock
room,
House.
no visual room between the sign and the ground. It's
Yeah.
solid.
Okay.
What
But
was-
if I'm not mistaken, is, what I just heard you say, that no matter what rule that we recommend to, the city council, the variance go bypass us and go straight to the council, is that
That's a
correct?
very good point, and I agree with you, but that's why I say this was presented to city council as a monument sign. And you got a city council member here you could ask, but, or you could read the article, or you can watch the video on your computer, and you'll see it was presented as a monument sign, and I think that helped make it palatable to the city council members.
But from what I understand, it was presented, the variance was presented twice to city council.
Right.
Is that correct? So the first time, as it was presented as a monument sign,
No, it wasn't presented the first time as a monument sign.
okay.
It was a 35-foot high sign
Right.
that that's what they
And then it
turned
went
away.
to a 24-foot monument sign?
They did a
25.
25-foot sign,
Right.
and because they put a little piece of brick down at the bottom, right at the ground,
Yeah.
before they had all that air up to the electronic message center, then they called it a monument sign.
And how are they getting by with the electronic thing too? That was bothering me.
We, in our ordinance, we allowed them,
Well, let's
except in the
just from
overlay
a-
district and the
Oh,
central
okay.
business district.
So then-
From
I
a
didn't like-
practical standpoint here, Steve's talking about putting in a driveway, a garage, extending his house and putting a lot of money in that property. This could be something that they don't do. They could decide, you know, hey, city council, good deal, but we're just not gonna stay here. I mean, were they not thinking of those people who lived in those nice houses all the way down
I asked the
Washington?
question the very first time it came up, and I was told by Lupe that no messages had to be sent out or notifications to any of the population because it was a sign ordinance. Nobody had to know that this variance request was being made. So none of the neighbors on that Post Oak
It remained
were
in the-
notified.
If it had remained in the zoning ordinance, it would
Yeah,
have,
or it was
right?
previously
Right.
that was.
Right.
So once again, they can take something city council that planning and zoning has set up, city council has approved, and they can go to the variance committee and just negate what we've done.
Well, that's it. And I don't mean to say anything against city council. I actually have a vested interest in those.
Well, I'm not saying
But-
anything against city council, I'm talking about the way it's set up. Apparently, they can just go to the variance committee, and so what?
But we did
With you
that
other two,
for
as long as we got a variance committee, who needs planning and zoning and the city council?
We did that for expedience sake, number one, and number two, if it didn't go to city council, it would have gone to the Board of Adjustment, and you know the history we've had with the Board of
Right.
Adjustment.
Right.
Just like that, they'll say, okay, no sidewalks.
Or whatever.
But I think it sounds like kind of, we all want the same thing, but we're, in order to make this different for the future, we're going to have to make a specific change, potentially. And so freeway, I mean, it's either permitting certain things in certain areas or not allowing them, or being stricter on the distance requirement from Highway 6, or whatever it is. But, I mean, what are your recommendations?
Well, first recommendation is, because everybody all the way on down Washington is gonna have to provide a monument sign, we better define the monument sign so that we don't get more of this as a monument sign. But instead, what we actually want as a monument sign.
But you know, Jeff, what bothers me about this, apparently now the damage is done. I mean, just like the theater sign that went up on the theater, the damage is done.
And that's wherein I get
And,
tired
and,
of
and the
this.
relationships in the community is done. You know, the support that these entities get is no longer there. I mean, young people, I mean, I don't understand this. I'm really don't understand this.
Well, what do you get is subject to interpretation. That's their verbiage, and I've gotten it from Brad more than once. And
So what are they
that's
saying,
their
they're gonna sue us
justification.
because they feel like that,
I'm just saying you need to make it so that there is no interpretation.
Well, if I can just add to what you're saying.
Sure. Wait, is he allowed to do that?
Let's let him.
So there's a couple of points that I want to make. And the original sign that came to us was much larger. And we looked at it from the audience that was here on Monday night to speak their mind, just like everybody's given the opportunity to come and speak. There were a few people from Post Oak that were here that did not speak to say anything about it, good, bad, or otherwise. It was clearly a posted meeting, just like all the other posted meetings. For me, I looked at the two options that we were given, which was the original option and the secondary option. I certainly understand the need to advertise, and we also want to be business friendly. And I want to help a business more than I would want to hurt a business. And they felt like that's what they needed in order to get their name out there so that folks along Highway 6 could see it. I did not feel comfortable with what was originally offered. I didn't feel totally acceptable to the second option, but I felt like the second option was better than turning away businesses that want to build in our community. And so that's why I voted the way that I did.
And I don't disagree with a single word Josh just said. And I don't know if Jim Colcourse has ever come north on 6, gotten off and come to that traffic signal at Washington. But if you look underneath the overpass, if it's a 35-foot sign, you're not even going to see it. I don't know that you're going to be able to see a 25-foot sign. You can just barely see that subway sign that's there, which is why it's as low as it is, I believe. So I don't think this is in his best interest, but he thinks it's in his best interest.
And I spoke to him about the car wash. He's not requesting a sign for the car wash on the pole.
Right.
Or on a monument.
But be careful, because he's going to take people out of his car wash, out through the Burger King and onto Post Oak.
So modifying the definition of a monument sign, do we also need to look at the distance requirement for the freeway pole sign
That's up to you guys, because the very next property is
in the overlay
in the
district?
overlay district. And yet right now, if you drive between LaSalle and this property, you'll see a dozen pole signs,
Right,
because all those were there before.
That's, yeah.
right.
before the sign ordinance. So I guess
Is there going to
in
be a,
conclusion, you guys are gonna be the watchdogs for the most part. People are gonna bring their signs and their proposed site plans to you all, and you'll see them before anybody, and you'll get to approve them, unless they then come and ask for a variance.
Well, we didn't get to approve this one.
and
No,
then,
they went right for a variance after talking with Brad. They knew they needed to.
do you also believe that we should advocate for notification requirements for variances for the sign ordinance?
I don't think you
To
can
the
do
city
that.
council?
Unless there's a way to just write that specifically, but I don't, the way it is right now in the
You could-
general verbiage.
I mean, you could add that as well as a requirement. The only reason it wasn't is because that just wasn't proposed when it was taken out of the zoning ordinance.
Right.
Yeah.
I certainly would advocate for that always, to notify the neighbors within so many feet. And 200, I don't think is enough anyway.
I don't either. I've been advocating for a change in that for a long
I'll
time.
send you an email.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the concerns of the couple of people that were here from Post Oak was more to do with traffic than the sign. They had no question about the sign whatsoever. They were more concerned with the flow of the traffic, and I
Right.
think they were satisfied with that.
I had to miss the meeting. I came in and for medical reasons, I had to leave. So I missed it all, but I watched it on TV later. So I really didn't see who was out here. I knew nobody came up to the microphone and said anything, but, so, you guys know more about that than I do. But again, thanks for letting me talk. I really appreciate everything you do. And you can ask me questions anytime you want. You can always find me. But I'm just speaking as a citizen. He's official.
Certainly. Oh. It could be 476 feet from the right of way and deeper into the neighborhood than if it were a post sign.
But that goes back to the definition, which then, that goes
Right.
back to the definition and does not meet the definition of a monument
Yeah.
sign.
I don't think it does either.
Right.
Do you all have in front of you the definition that's in our sign ordinance of a monument sign?
A sign permanently affixed to the ground, not elevated by any pole or structure, not attached to or dependent upon any building for support. And it has a
That's
defined
it, in a
area.
nutshell.
Right.
Yep. And then, I guess the other ambiguity is that it's the freestanding sign. We have pole signs, freeway signs, and freestanding signs. And, I guess we could, and I'm sure it's as much my fault as anybody's that we weren't clearer on what the differences were among all those. But I love that you guys put pictures in there and so on to help define it.
Well, I think we ought
So
to
is
put that
it
on our
done? I mean,
agenda.
it's done deal, there's no,
Approved by city council, the variance was, yeah.
Wow. Sure, there's nothing, some level of politics couldn't handle. Yes, that's correct.
But while I'm here, because I might not be here again, I will say that if you look at the site plan that Jim has, one of his selling points the second night, was that he's going to enclose the property with a fence, separate himself from the neighborhood. But that's not what his site plan shows. His site plan shows that the fence is at the end of the parking lot. Then he's got a huge detention pond that's not separated from the neighborhood. So Sarah, your good friend that lives right next to that property is going to really enjoy having that detention pond that's out of sight, out of mind, right next to her house. I predict. So,
I think we need
Good time.
to be, to really redo this and look at it again and look at it in a way that makes it more concrete, and also, maybe I shouldn't say this, but where if it were a normal person that came, we would treat them the same. To me, I fear that sometimes by name, we're not treating people the same way. as we would treat everybody, you know, and so I really hope that when we write something, that it solidifies the fact that, we treat everybody with equality.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's like Burger King's more important than all those residents who live in that area. That particular business that has sold out, that is no longer owned by Texas owners, it is now owned by a conglomerate outside this nation.
Oh, Burger King, or I know the
Burger
Whataburger
King.
just sold.
Is it,
but-
well, I think
yeah.
Burger King. I had to listen to it twice. It started out, didn't Burger King start out in Texarkana?
I don't know.
And then now is yes.
I'll just say that back when I was doing Casa Olays, the CEO of Burger King and the majority stakeholder sold out and went and took over Casa Olay. He got paid $25 million. He needed to invest it somewhere, so he invested in Casa Olay. But it became a real public corporation ever since that day. And now I don't think there's any. There may be a CEO, but there's no one owner anymore.
Well, I think I heard it on the radio. I tried to listen to it again, but I think it was Burger King that sold out, that was originated in Texarkana and now has belonged to a conglomerate that's not even in the country.
Well, I would recommend that Whataburger did, that we do this as soon as possible. Like, Mr. Horn pointed out, you know, there's gonna be other businesses coming in, and there's gonna be more requests for, additional signs, so I think we need to get on this.
Well, let me
as soon
ask
as
you
possible.
this. If we go in and redo this, and we make it absolutely specific, then can this particular entity turn around and go to the variance, get a variance out of what we have
Well,
done?
This
I mean,
particular entity's already approved by city council.
yes,
so
but
there's
can
nothing
they,
gonna
can they
change.
just, even though we work hard to change this so it's more specific, can they turn around and get a variance again?
Anyone,
they
as
could
long as there's a
ask.
variance process, someone
Right.
can apply for a variance.
Right.
If that's the question you're asking.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily, I think if we have the appropriate language that is, you know, defines it better and is stronger, then, you know, we're less likely to hear that a variance has been granted.
Yeah, I think we can actually probably put it on the 25th agenda for
Okay,
this
good.
month.
All right, Mr. Horn.
I was just gonna say, a great example of what Patty's asking about was when Walmart submitted their design. Sarah was there at the time, and we pretty much said, this isn't quite in keeping with what we want. And we've seen other Walmarts, brand new ones, that looked a lot better and chopped up the facade into a more human scale.
Yes.
We hired a company, Burdett, and we wrote new regulations and design guidelines and so on, but it was still too late. Once Walmart had submitted their stuff even, it was too late for us to come up with something and say, now you have to adhere to that, so.
So that brings up a point to me then that says if they don't proceed with their project within X amount of time, then they have to come back. You know, so maybe we need to build some sort of time in there, you know, because that was a couple years ago.
Right, well, Lupe can answer that better, but remember, we have the subdivision over in Dove Crossing, that the site plan was approved 25 years ago or so, and because it was approved then,
Yeah.
you know, we stuck with it today.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that-
we ought to put some time.
I think that's more of a legal, like vested property rights issue. I think that goes above city ordinance. I'm assuming, but I mean, I wish Carrie
asking
Luke
Carrie.
were here to answer that one. But I think it's more of a vested property rights issue. I'm not sure that we could do that or we couldn't, but I can.
I think we should ask. I think we should ask Carrie about that. Because I think that it's reasonable, you know, I mean, there's, everything changes all the time. And so to me, it's reasonable that, you know, you start your project or something, complete your project within a certain timeline. Yes, sir.
Okay, so then the last thing.
Yes.
I know that Brad doesn't want to be adversarial.
No.
I don't either.
None of us do.
City Council with Jim Colcourse.
Right.
We want a Burger King. We just wish he was being more sensitive to the city.
Yeah.
But so, while you're talking about doing all that sort of stuff, just remember that we don't want to push developers away.
No.
He's agreed to, in this project, to redo his facade of that existing subway building and
Good.
spruce it up, and who knows what it's gonna look like, but
Yeah.
he's agreed to do as nice a job there as he could and so on, so we don't wanna totally quash him, but I just wish he was a little more sensitive to our.
So Jeff, let me ask you this, the Burger King's gonna go in where that house is,
Right,
and he owns that little strip shopping center there,
yes.
and he's gonna put in a car wash in that area somewhere?
Got it.
Between the strip center and the Burger King, yes.
Okay, so there's gonna be a car wash there, the Burger King here, and then he's gonna spruce up that little, where the, other little place is, the little sandwich place. What is it?
Yeah.
Subway.
So it's we're gonna
Little
have
Subway.
Whatever you call that building,
Yeah.
yes.
And
car washes
he's,
in a block?
he also agreed to,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
oh, no, go ahead, Joe.
My confusion and concern about the car wash
Yeah.
is exactly like that, but this is actually gonna be a attended car wash where you pull up.
Okay.
It gets on a track, goes through a building, and then
Like Drew's or something
Yeah,
up there by
exactly.
Tower Point.
And Sarah, for your friends, you know, if you've ever been outside one of those car washes, you know they are.
Noisy, yeah.
That's what
Wow.
bothers me about Post Oak neighborhood.
Okay.
I've got a question for staff before we start jumping off into this, because when we did the sign ordinance, we spent quite a bit of time on it, some late nights. Is it the consensus of the court that we, when I say the court, I'm talking about the council, revisit this? Because whatever changes we make, they're gonna make the last decision whether yay or nay.
True. And there might be things that we say, oh, that looks good, and we just keep going, you know.
Yeah, and actually, that's something that I need to check with Carrie. I wrote it down because when the sign ordinance was drafted, it was still within the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Once it was enacted, it got moved to Chapter 3. So I just got to make sure on the legal side, the proper steps, but I'm sure we'll be able to go back and redefine monument sign and pole sign to make it more clear.
But are you suggesting that we get some direction from council to do that as a whole prior to moving into that effort?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I agree. I mean, with you also because
What's the point?
four
Yeah.
people voted for a variance on Monday.
Wow.
So,
Well, I don't believe that Burger King, he's been planning to do this for years. So I don't believe that they would have not built Burger King if we had held to our monument sign, that our intentions were a monument sign. And I don't believe he would have not built the Burger King if he couldn't have put in that 24-foot sign.
Yeah.
I don't believe that one bit. I don't believe that held him back from getting this Burger King. You know, but I do believe it's going to affect all the residences around there.
24 feet, that's not, my opinion is not very tall. I mean, I must say, look at what Shamrock, it's about the same height there.
How tall is the ceiling?
25 feet.
You said
This
what,
ceiling
Jeff?
is at least 14 to 22, 20
25 feet
feet.
is what?
How tall is the
I said
ceiling?
not to split hairs, but it's
Right.
not 24 feet.
It's 25, right.
Okay.
Well, my ceilings are 14 to 20 feet in there, and it's giant. It's taller than this. Right here, it's another 2 or 3 feet beyond this ceiling. I mean, that's a tall sign.
Well, if I could just make the recommendation,
yeah,
perhaps we could move from this topic.
we have another lengthy
If you
item.
have a concern, or you want to let us know what it is that your thoughts are by serving on the commission, then come to the council meeting and bring those topics up. That would have been the time and place to kind of discuss that. I do not believe that Mr. Colfort's ever said that he would not build it if he didn't get the sign. That was not part of the information that he provided to us.
No.
So, the other thing is the Burger King itself is 25 feet tall. So the sign will be the equal distance to the top of his building. So there's a lot of other information, a lot of other things that kind of go into making decisions.
Yeah.
And we just need to be aware that there are other things that we also have to look at
Yes, but I have one last thing, and I'm gonna say,
I'm sorry, this is gonna be a really lengthy item, the next item, and I don't want to be here a ton
well, I
of
just
time.
wanna
Can
say
we
one
move
last thing. The
forward,
reason why
please?
we set up these ordinances is so people like, that live over there don't have to go down and look at city council every day to see if something's gonna threaten their property.
Yeah, totally understand. And I was concerned as well, and wanted to give that feedback from residents. We had some here, that didn't speak, so.
Okay. All right, thank you for remarks from Connie and Mr. Fultz and Mr. Horn, appreciate those. And so we'll close the remarks of visitors section, and we'll move on to item number 3, hold a wireless telecommunication facility regulations workshop for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so thankfully, staff did some good work on this. I hope everybody's had an opportunity to review and read the material that they presented to us. And so let us begin a discussion, and if you would, Lupe, please, start us off. Tell us.
Well, basically, Planning and Zoning Commission, you know, as y'all know, we had a wireless tower try to build in our city a few weeks ago at this point. During that process, it was brought to our attention that we really didn't have any existing requirements/regulations for wireless cell towers. And so this was kind of our attempt to bring something in front of you guys to start the conversation and hopefully get some direction after, you know, you guys take a look at this to see if there's anything that you want to add or remove or any thoughts or questions or concerns. The big thing that I noticed after looking at multiple cities is that they really prioritize the location, how many, and then the actual visibility of each tower. So that's kind of incorporated here into the proposed regulations. And like I said, if y'all have any questions, I can definitely try my best to answer those. And then also, if y'all have any suggestions, I'm thinking that we could probably, depending on tonight's conversation, we could potentially get this into ordinance form following your input, and then get it to council.
One of the things that I noticed when, section 2D, it's 1, 2, 3, there's some evidence that we're asking, engineering requirements, structural information, and then cost associated with their ability not to locate on an existing tower. I know that was some of the information that the applicant alluded to, but there was no real criteria. Right. And so I feel like it would be helpful within this section to further define the level of information that we're looking for, specific details, so that they're actually having to provide, the rental rate or the cost of their existing agreement or how it's improved, or quantify the fee, the benefit to users, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it was like there was information that was presented, but it didn't necessarily support I felt it didn't necessarily justify a new tower. So
absolutely.
I don't know how we further define that, but I can see there's some ambiguity in the level of information that they need to provide there specifically.
Maybe like saying a certain percentage. The cost of a new tower it has to be a certain percentage more than a proposed lease or available lease or something like that. I guess that would be pretty hard to do though, since
it's
building a new tower is pretty costly.
For sharing is unreasonable. We don't really have any criteria for what's unreasonable. We don't know what's unreasonable to someone, so it could be that it increases $1 for them and they perceive that as unreasonable. So I'm not concerned how they quantify unreasonable, but just making sure that we get the actual rental agreement or, some sort of financial report that demonstrates the impact that they've experienced. And then as for the engineering side of it, the coverage, et cetera, there should be also quantifiable. They showed coverage area, but they didn't, when asked how's this going to improve coverage, he couldn't really quantify it. And so I don't know enough about
Yeah.
that type of engineering to be able to say how that could be presented, but to me, presenting the information is one thing, and then making sure that it justifies the request may be different.
Well, and down here in D, where it says at least 3 co-location alternatives, you know, I was thinking to myself when I read that, you know, how many locators can we put on a tower? You know, I mean, and we haven't defined that anywhere, you know, so that's kind of what I felt like last time was that they, you know, were saying, well, we've got X amount, you know, they never really said how many people or how many companies they had located on the existing tower, but they just wanted to go ahead and build a new tower for one. And so to me, it's like, well, how many people can be on this tower, and then how many people are on this tower? And so I felt like that needed more clarification as well. You know, because if you can put 8 co-locators on the tower and you've only got 3, why do you need a new tower?
Yeah.
You know, so I think, you know, it needs, you know, the apartment building needs to be full before you build another one or something, you know.
So you would like to see the existing and available spaces in other towers?
Yes.
basically?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's extremely important.
I said this earlier, and I haven't pulled up it says that the setbacks are required to comply with the standard setbacks for each zoning district and comply with landscaping and screening required for this section. I think that they're only permitted through a conditional use in ag open where I don't think we have setback requirements, and we don't have any landscaping or screening requirements.
So there is, while we were talking, I looked it up, and it is in the B1 as well. B1 is a conditional use.
So do we then need to go into ag open and pet those types of requirements? And, you know, because at that point, they wouldn't have those requirements if they were seeking a permit for a tower in an ag open area.
Well, we could put the setback requirements here and just say, you know, these are like complementary to the existing.
Okay.
I think that would be fun. And then copy some landscaping and screening from one of the business districts.
Okay. I think there was something in here about that, but I can.
I saw something.
Oh, it's at the very last thing. Number 3B on the last page.
Okay.
But yeah, I can look at some B1 verbiage and.
And the security fencing, this doesn't indicate materials. I can't remember what we do in some of the other business districts, but I think whatever we're requiring for, in terms of materials for fencing, I would prefer to see a masonry fence instead of like chain link fence, but I mean, I don't
think we don't
It's a
stipulate that in
galvanized,
our zoning ordinance anywhere, or any of the classifications, districts. It's just fencing.
Can I ask you a question?
the base of the tower, and they're usually, I mean, I passed one earlier, they've got a structure where they can get in and I guess operate any of the mechanical or electrical equipment in there. Sometimes there's dishes, I think, on the base. It talks
And like a
about
little small hut too, of communication. So I guess the idea behind that is they want to screen everything at eye level. So if you're driving past it, you at least see some screening versus the base of the tower.
Because I believe there was talk about the whole tower, and then, if I remember
Right, there was that
there
conversation.
was some talk about that.
I said that in other communities, I've seen them where they look like a tree, and it's not necessarily appropriate where you don't have any trees, but it could look like a lot of things. I mean,
Yeah.
I won't go there.
Let's make them all look like a guitar for Navasota.
This is just an English thing, you know, where you've abbreviated WTF.
Yes.
You go up to where it says wireless telecommunication facility, and in parentheses put WTF, so
Yeah.
we'd all know what that means. It's like, I kept going back going, what does that mean? And It's like, let's, maybe that's kinda odd.
Yeah, during the week when I was going back and rereading it after I
Yeah.
finalized it, I was like,
Yeah.
What the-
abbreviation. Look, on section 2, general design standards, I did do that. I spelled it out and abbreviated, but yeah. I don't know if, I don't know if you'd want to change that to something out. I don't know how else you would abbreviate that, though. Spell it all the way out every time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably so. Mhm.
Okay, I'll make that change.
It could be misconstrued as something else.
Uh-huh.
You know, the WTF could have whole different meaning. So I think that
They
it ought
could,
to be specific.
They could misconstrue that as
Yes.
a water tower foundation.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, good point.
yes, you know, we really need to be specific.
The density is 2 miles from all, it has to be placed within 2 miles. It can't be placed any closer, I guess, than 2 miles.
Yeah.
What's the width and length of city limits?
So that's specifically why I put 2 miles. The ordinance that I found online had 1 mile, but then when I measured from the corner of Washington and LaSalle 1 mile out, it was still about close to our central business district a little bit. So I did 2 miles, so that way every new tower that goes in, you'd basically be on the outskirts of town, roughly. Yeah. So that was the
Could
idea.
you push it, could you create a distance where it wouldn't be permitted?
I don't think so.
Like 100 miles?
No, it has to be within city limits via the 1996 FCC something. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do these people have to have some sort of liability insurance on, if kids are, I'm just worried about kids coming up to the fence doing bad things, is there some sort of requirement where,
So there is, on the last page, dear, number 2, it says that the fences need to be equipped with appropriate anti-climbing device. Now, however they,
okay.
accommodate that, yeah. Hot wire,
Shock
barbed
'em.
wire, yeah.
Electrocute them before they even get to the tower.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Well, I think it's a very good start. I really do. I took home, after that last, when we heard all the opposing, views from the folks, I took home the ordinance and, that one gentleman provided to
Oh,
us
yeah.
and read through it. And, so I'm glad to see we're moving forward.
And
With
that cell phone tower was not approved, is that correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty good, what I've seen here, and, under, general standard and design, 2 towers shall not be placed within 2 miles of each other. I think that's good, that don't have them on top of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll avoid situation like we had.
Yeah, you just about have one on each end of town now, because the town is not that many miles long. How many miles long, Sarah, you run?
Well, I know it's about a mile and a little bit over a mile from Post Oaks down to the this intersection.
Let's say you ran the whole
So
thing.
you'll kind of tweak it and add some of those things and then bring it back to us?
Yep, I'll do that.
Okay. Okay.
You run long at all.
All righty. And so maybe at our next meeting, you'll bring it back to us?
Yep.
On the 25th?
Yeah, and I think at that point it'll probably still be a workshop, but it will be an ordinance format, so it's really clean and we can see how it'll look once it's
Okay.
finalized.
Nice. Very good. Thank you.
Also, I've had a request if we could put on the next, or one of them coming up, that revisit some of our design ordinances. Instead of saying we have to have certain stone on something, to say, well, it has to match. Something's rather where we revisit that. Do we have any plans to revisit those things that the state has struck down?
Yeah, that is something that we're working on. We're trying to come up with a way to encourage masonry and encourage that nicer finish, exterior finish, without saying you have to use this material. And Jonathan's actually been looking at some incentives or something that the city could offer to do that. So we're looking at it from a few different angles, but I can definitely put something together, at least a report to show you guys what's in the works.
I listened to
Okay.
a presentation where the city of Kyle was talking about development agreements, and they were saying that in their development agreements, they're creating design standards, because it's a contractual agreement between the city and a developer. And so when they agree to it, then they are developing to that standard, rather than an ordinance, it's imposing a requirement. So you might reach out to them and see
Yeah.
what they're doing.
That's good, that's
Who's this?
great, that's a good workaround. Mhm.
Well, I'm sure there's some good minds looking at this that
Absolutely.
we could pull from, but we need to address it rather quickly.
Yeah.
You know, so that we don't have a situation come up that's regretful.
But wouldn't that also fall under either the POA or HOA for these subdivisions? Aren't they
The
controlled?
HOAs, yes, but then there's lots of areas in town that aren't
Right,
HOA.
Right.
Yeah.
That we have to address, that really have to do with, the whole look of the
Wasn't the
town.
downtown area, our historic district is
Yeah,
not
historic
part of
districts are
this.
exempt from that.
Exempt from that.
Yeah, but that ends right at those blocks,
Right.
so all these homes down
Right.
Washington and all those homes out in here, everywhere.
Let's
are
grow the
affected.
historic district. Let's just expand
That's what I
it.
asked. I asked why couldn't it just be considered,
Yeah.
but does somebody have to come out and designate it a historic district? I mean, how do you get that designation?
I don't know that question.
Process through it's a part of the National Register, so,
I think you have to.
Texas
prove
Historic Commission, I'd start there looking at, I don't know.
Pardon me, but,
The Texas Historic Commission would have some regulations for how you move something through, but you could do the same thing with a neighborhood.
Yeah.
I think we need to look at that too. I think if we could look at several ways of going at this, then surely we could lock down something that would, work, possibly.
Okay, anybody have anything else, on our workshop about the wireless telecommunications facility, the WTF?
Are you gonna put that in the paper?
Okay, we will close the workshop at 6:53. Item number 4, consideration and possible action on approval of the meeting minutes for June 27th, 2019, and they are in front of you.
So move.
Second.
Okay, thank you so much. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, please say no or nay. None is heard for opposition, so the minutes are approved. And all appreciated. And so item number 5, unless anyone has anything else, we will adjourn. Okay.
All right.
Lupe, I do have a question now that we're adjourned.